Okay, well, Susie isn't here to introduce me. I met her volunteering at I better come over here, at Katy Prairie Conservancy. And I was a big girl tonight. I came in on the West Park Tollway all by myself. I've never done that before. I was very apprehensive about it, and I almost shot off on 610. I came all the way from West Houston. So I did make it. That was my big fear. My next fear was that this system wouldn't work, and it didn't. So I've got my backup, and we're good to go. It's going to be fine. So before I take your hour, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm glad you came out too. My career, my profession, for many years, I trained as an anatomist, and I taught anatomy at what was then the University of Texas Medical School at Houston for many years. Oh, you got it. Do I have to get closer?
Yeah.
Okay. So I did that for several years, and then I retired, and I did several other things. I've had other careers, but one of the first things I did, because I loved seeing the geese come in on West Houston, is I started volunteering at Katy Prairie Conservancy. And that really opened doors for me, and it showed me that there's a huge, wonderful conservation community in Houston that I wanted to be part of. And I joined the Texas Master Naturalists Coastal Prairie chapter, yay. Joined them in 2011. I've been on the board in all the different positions you can be in. And around 2013, before Monarchs became a big deal, I got interested in the Monarchs. And that's why I'm here talking to you. And as I was preparing my talk, I was thinking, why do they want to hear about monarchs? Because they're native plant people. And I thought of 3 good reasons why you would. First of all, 400 million years ago, native flowering plants and butterflies showed up together in the evolutionary timeline. So we have that connection. The other one is native milkweeds. We wouldn't have a migration without the native milkweeds, because the monarchs come up out of Mexico and they go north. They're following the native milkweeds. We have over 100 species of native milkweed in North America, and they start coming up as the spring goes on, and it lures them up. And the third and most important reason is I think that you'll have fun with this. This is a really cool story. It's a story that I think is impossible. I think it's almost a miracle that it happens, and I love sharing it with people. So with that, let me see if I can advance myself here. Yay, okay. So I began with the monarchs when some bird or something dropped a little Mexican milkweed in the crack in my backyard. I have no backyard, I have a swimming pool, and I quickly figured out the connection, and I had no idea because people weren't really into monarchs at that time. And I loved the monarchs, and everyone does. Once you get one of these, you go down that road and you become addicted. And I love the little guys, the little caterpillars, and we're all kind of the same age. You remember white spats and Fred Astaire and stuff. So then I thought, oh, it looks like Fred Astaire, doesn't it? So I dressed him up. And it took him around as long as he lived. So anyhow, I couldn't keep it to myself, and I thought, I've got to go share this with everyone that I can because it's so much fun. And there was a nursery school by me and a church where there are people of all ages who go there. And I started sharing my little caterpillars. Little kids, I'm telling you, 3- and 4-year-olds totally get it. They understand everything I can throw at them. It's incredible what little scientists they are. And older people, everyone loves these critters. And even the teenagers, I don't know if you've ever tried to teach teenagers, they have to be so cool, they show no expression. So I make them put them on their faces and break down that barrier. Okay, then how many of you have seen Flight of the Butterflies? If you haven't seen it, try to get a chance to see it. It tells the story of how the whole migratory pattern was discovered and how their overwintering sites were discovered. And we could spend an hour talking about that and Fred Urquhart and his finding the overwintering sites in Mexico in 1975, which was not that long ago, you know. And so I decided, gosh, someday I'm going to go there. And in all the meetings I've been to, master naturalists, pollinators, everything, I've never seen videos. I've never heard anyone talk who had been there, this magical place. And so I kept whining to my daughter and saying, oh, someday I'm going to go there. Oh, this looks so wonderful. And so she looked at me one day and she said, Mom, it's time to go. You're getting older. And her wise cat lover boy agreed, and she and my husband and I went down to Mexico, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So all the overwintering sites are in Michoacan, as you can see down here, off to the west of Mexico. And we went with a big group. And it was led by Dr. Tom Emmel. I'm sure some of you know him. He was a giant in the field. He took over 200 trips, eco trips, guiding people around the world for conservation purposes. He was with the University of Florida, and he knew so much. It was just incredible. So we went on this trip in February 2 years ago. He had one more trip. He went to South America, and he was showing people around, and in the night he died in his sleep peacefully. So he passed right after we went. I couldn't believe it. And then we lost another great in Lincoln Brower, who talked a lot, or did a lot of research on cardiac glycosides, which are in milkweeds, and the caterpillars eat those, and it makes the butterflies toxic to predators. So we lost 2 giants in the field 2 years ago. Now, how many of you know nothing about the migration? How many of you know a little bit? How many of you know a lot? Okay, so we're going to go through it. I'll do some of the basics, but until I went on this trip and I heard Dr. Emmel, I had no idea how complex and amazing this thing was. So I have to say it's a little bait and switch. I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about the migration phenomenon and the science behind it than the videos. The videos will be at the end, but it'll all be worth it. Okay, and even my little 3-year-olds, get this, this is 101. We have the egg, we've got the caterpillar, the chrysalis, and the butterfly. Okay. So it's obligatory that these caterpillars have milkweed, whether it's native or tropical. The female butterfly will not lay her eggs on anything but milkweed. So that's essential for the health of the whole population. The butterflies themselves don't need milkweed to survive. They need nectar. So they can go to any flowering plant, and they're fine. They can go to milkweed, they can go to mist flowers, or anything they want. That's the difference between them, and that's really important to understand the migration. So here are these little guys eating up my tropical milkweed, which I'm not supposed to have. I know I'm supposed to have native, but it hadn't worked for me. And as they're eating, they are taking in cardiac glycosides. Cardiac glycosides, as Lincoln Brower found, fill their system, and when they become butterflies, it makes them toxic to vertebrates. And the birds have learned, leave alone the orange and black butterflies because they're full of cardiac glycosides. If you get any on your finger, like I have twice, and you get it in your eye, you'll go blind for several days, and it'll feel like you have jalapenos in your eyes. So these are really crazy. It's a crazy chemical. And the other thing, which I did not know before I went on this trip, is the milkweeds contain magnetite. Now, right now, that doesn't mean anything to you. But when we go further along, you're going to see why I gave you that little bit of information. So to be sure we're all on the same page before we go any deeper, gosh, I'm going to swing this over here. Can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay, so like right now, the butterflies are coming through. 99% of the North American butterflies are going to come down across the country from as far as the Great Lakes and pass down through Texas and go to Michoacan. California is a whole different thing. That's a whole different talk. So we're not going to talk about those western monarchs. So they come down, and as they're coming down, they are in an asexual phase for the most part. And what they're doing is they are finding nectar plants as they come down, and they're fattening up so that they can turn sugar into lipid, and they can go down and they can spend the winter. They are one of the few species that migrates, and they're actually fatter when they get finished with their migration. So they come down to Michoacan and they party all winter. They get there like on the Day of the Dead, and then they go back up around March, and they come back up. They'll come right through where we are, and now they have begun to mate, and they've begun to reproduce, and they're going to stop right here in South Texas, and they're going to mate and lay eggs and die. So that generation has gone like 3,000 miles, and they've lived a long time, many, many, many months. They're kind of an abnormal generation that comes down. And they come down here, and they lay their eggs, they die, and then those butterflies come out, and they go, now they're following the milkweed north. Now you need milkweed. Milkweed's important in the spring, so they come up, they go a little bit further, and they live about 4 weeks, and they mate and die. These come up, and they go up to around the Great Lakes. So they're about 3 or 4 generations beyond here that get up, and some of them stay in different places along the country, but most of them go back up here, and that's where they go. So that's sort of an overview. Okay, so as they're coming down, and they love to have flowers. I love mist flower. I have this in my backyard. It attracts, I don't know which one to push here. I'm going to push that. And the mist flower is a native. It attracts butterflies, skippers, bees, all kinds of butterflies, wasps, beetles, everything. So that's a wonderful native plant for them as they're coming down in the fall. When in Michoacan, there are white mist flowers there. This is on the mountains. So they have some of that to eat when they're there. And here is your native plant portion of my talk. I was up in Michigan, and I saw this. Do y'all know what that is? Who knows what that is? Oh, did I stump you? Michigan, look at this. Now watch this. This plant was everywhere, and the butterflies were crazy for it because they're up in Michigan. This is in August. That means they're not looking for milkweed. They're filling up on nectar, and this was their favorite, which I never see down here. And look at them hanging on. And it's blowing them all around. So that's Joe Pye weed. Can we not grow it here? That was what I wanted. We can? Well, I see someone's going, and then someone's going.
East Texas.
East Texas?
Yeah.
But not here in Houston?
I don't know, but
I'm going to try it.
East Texas. Oh, yeah. You probably can try it, but I mean, it'll probably grow here, but I've seen it in East Texas.
Okay. So that was a big favorite. And this was up there they had Asclepias syriaca, a common milkweed with these big broad leaves, and they were going to pod. There were very few flowers left. That one was on the flowers. I would go everywhere I went. We were hiking for about 4 days, and every time I saw milkweed, I'd look underneath to make sure, are there any caterpillars? Were they reproducing? There were no caterpillars at all. But look at what this was. So I walked up on this milkweed, and they're on the veins, and as I walked up, these guys started parachuting off. They were dropping, and this big guy, I walked up on him, and look what he did to me. No, don't you come here. And then who knows what that is? I had remembered, and I checked it. It's a tussock moth. So that the milkweed is a host plant for tussock moths. Okay, let's move on. What triggers the fall migration? Why all of a sudden, do they all have this collective subconscious mindset, it's time to go? And there are just so many things you just can't even imagine. So they come in, again, from the Great Lakes and everything on down and pass through here. And one thing that triggers it off that I think is interesting, whoever thought of this, the sun angle. So the angle of the sun in the summer throughout the United States is over like 60, at least 60 degrees to the vertical. But when the sun begins to fall and the sun moves south in the fall, and it drops to an angle of 55 to the vertical, that tells them. So that's going to happen early, so they had not left yet when I was in August, but September or so they start coming down, and as the sun angle changes progressively, they catch up and they start coming down too. Temperature, the temperatures are going down, they think that triggers a response. And the milkweeds are beginning to senesce, as we all know. They don't live through the winter, they're going away, and all of these things tell the butterflies it's time to go. And they will come down through here. I don't know if you've been in, I've been in Del Rio at this time of year, had hundreds of them hitting the windshield of my car. Have you all ever experienced that? And Linda, I think you probably have experienced them when you go to South Texas. And in hill country, you'll find them in the trees forming roosts. So right now they're coming through in great numbers, and there's a Gulf Coast flyway. So they come through Texas, and now they're going to go to to Michoacan down in here. That's their destination, a long way to go. And that is a fascinating phenomenon. So they're going to come out of Texas, and they're going to follow this mountain range, the Sierra Madre Oriental, and they come over it, and they're riding on the crest here, and there are east winds that come up the mountains and push them up, and they can fly 100 miles a day. And they come down these mountains, and down they come, and they get to about here, I don't know the name of it, and the mountains continue along the coast, and you know what? They go south, they leave. They leave the mountains, and there are passes here where they say like 1,000 will go through per minute. It's full of flowers and stuff, and they go, it's really hard to see that phenomenon. So they make a south turn, and now they're going to come down to this range here. They've left the mountains and they're coming here, and you can see that it's a neovolcanic belt. So what's happened there over the eons is that iron ores have been kicked up, and they think that it's the magnetite in their bodies that's responding to the iron ore and causes them to leave the mountains and go to this area in here. There are now 12 mountaintops that they come to. There used to be at least 20. The ones that most visitors, such as myself, go to are Sierra Chinqua, a tiny one, and El Rosario. Now, when they get to that transvolcanic belt, you see this little area in black here? This is where they have to go. This is the only place they can go because this is where there are Oyamel firs on the mountains. The Oyamel firs look like that. They have little tiny needles, and they can only go to that particular habitat right in there. They have to be at the right altitude, which is between 10 and 12,000 feet. Now, if it's warmer, they're going to die. If it's colder, they're going to die. Well, it isn't colder. That's about it, is 12,000 feet. And the reason they need the oyamels is the needle size. The needles are tiny, and their little tarsal claws can grab onto a needle. They can't, other pine needles, they can't hold on to, they're too big. So these guys have to go, and that's why they have to go to the Oyamel fir forest. And they'll hold on to the needles, and they're going to go down and pretty much stay in that forest the whole time, hang on to the pine needles 12 deep. So one will be holding on to the pine needles, and the other one will hold its wing or its body, and that they have to support 12. They need the warmth, they need the protection, so they gang up on these trees. So they need all those things have to fall into place. Okay, so if that isn't crazy enough that it even happens, how they do it is absolutely crazy. Let's see, let me make sure I'm getting everything in that I wanted to tell you. Okay, first, in the fall, certain genes begin to become operative. They call them Methuselah genes. And these Methuselah genes are unique to this one generation of super butterflies, and it causes their gonads to cease functioning. So they cease reproduction. The testes and ovaries cease to function. And so, but it makes sense. They've got a long trip to make. You don't want to take that trip with kids. Not my kids. And their lifespan has increased 9-fold, so they're the super generation. And someday we'll do genetic engineering for people, and people with enough money will be able to live 9 times longer, right? So they live longer because they've got to live 9 months, and their metabolic efficiency increases. They have a larger wingspan. These are all genetic changes that occur in this generation. So there's a big difference between them and the later generations, the spring generations. The other reason that they can do this is they've got this incredible system. They have an internal solar circadian compass. So their eyes detect the position of the sun, but it can be cloudy, things can change, and that isn't enough. In their antenna, they have a circadian clock. So as they're going along, let's see. You know, they can't just follow the sun or they'll just be going around and around in circles. So they know what time of day it is. They know if the sun is here and it's 8 o'clock, they have to go that direction. If the sun is there and it's 4 o'clock, they have to go in that direction. And someone wrote this about that phenomenon. That level of navigational expertise would require, for a human, a compass, a clock, a sextant, a current astronomical almanac, a magnetic map of the region, and a high level of skill and computational ability. And these little things that weigh the size of the weight of a paperclip do that by the millions. It's astonishing. Okay, once they're in Mexico, they use a geomagnetic compass to get here into this area as we discussed. And in addition to that, they not only go to the Oyamel fir forest, they'll go to the same mountain as their great-great-great-grandmother, their ancestors. They may even go to the same tree. They go back to the exact location, even though they're 4 generations separated, and it's hypothesized that it may be wing scales that have pyrazines in them, and there's some odor. No one, I don't think, quite knows how they managed to find their home mountain and their home tree. Now, I've been doing a little research on this, and after a lot of study and work, I've found one other thing that is responsible for their ability, which I'm going to publish this soon, is that they do body pump. Don't laugh at me, I'm going to publish it someday. And here they come to the forest. You can see, here's the Oyamel fir trees. Here are the mountains. So many, I mean, we could have another talk about how they were discovered. Catalina Trail and her fiance accepted Brugger's, Urquhart's request to find the site that the Monarchs went to, and they spent 2 years looking for it and hiding their motorcycle, going up and down, looking for just the place between 10 and 12,000 miles. 2 years it took them going here, and finally on January 1st, I believe it was, in 1975, they found it, and she made National Geographic for that, and she now lives in Austin, and she comes to a lot of events. So I've met her, and she's a great lady. Okay, so now we're going to go to Mexico. We went with Holbrook Travel. Again, that was Dr. Emmel's group that he brought. That's me, my daughter, and my husband. And off we went before we got too old and rickety to make this. Flew down to Mexico City. I don't know about you, I'd never been to Mexico City. I was astonished at Mexico City. I was so pleased. Look at how, I mean, it just must dwarf Houston.
See the haze. And no traffic.
No traffic from up here. And just so cute. What a lovely place. So colorful. The people were so nice. So many wonderful artists have been there. Diego Rivera. I was fetched with his paintings. I really wondered when I saw this, what are they doing to this poor prisoner, these guards? And he's got some weird instrument here, but it's beautiful paintings. We loved all of that. Salvador Dali sculptures. There they are peeking at me. So I love Mexico. I love the colors. We went to old pyramids, and inside there were paintings, and these were on, well, I guess this is over 1,000 years old. And what do you think this is coming out of his mouth? Okay, actually, that's a good guess, but it's not right. Maybe like a spirit, something very lofty. No, it's like a bubble. It's like they're saying, oh my God, you know, it's showing him talking. It was nothing that exotic. From Mexico City, we stayed there for several days, and then we took a bus to Angangueo, which is the tourist spot to go to if you're going to these. And Angangueo is a lovely little provincial town. It's been there for a long, long time. There's one hotel that caters to all of us tourists, and it's all butterfly oriented. Little stuff on the doors, really cute. I'm going to make sure my speaker's turned up. I don't know how well my speaker is going to work, but kind of a sleepy little town, but it's just a huge tourist attraction for people who are coming to see the bioreserves. That was the view from our hotel room. And we finally got to the first sanctuary, the largest one, El Rosario. That's the three of us on our way. And so then you have to walk or take a horse up. And all of them are the natives are, of course, trying to make some money off the tourists. They're really smart. Little kids are selling walking sticks. They'll polish your shoes. They'll do anything to make a little bit of money, which I think is great. And these are stores that they're going to be having in the future. They weren't open yet. And then at first they had stairs. It wasn't a steep climb, but it took a long, long time to go up. And I was just exhausted after doing it, which was my concern. That's why I wanted to go before I turned 90. And a lot of salvia, a lot of understory, very pretty, almost tropical looking up there in the mountains. It was very cold. We went up, that's me on horseback. We went up at about 8 or 9 in the morning. There's a lot of traffic, lots of people, lots of locals coming, and they're taking horses. You can see how dusty and dry it is. They're kicking that dust up, going up there. So what I had seen, what I had imagined in my mind is that we were going to go up and we were going to be in this forest and we were going to be surrounded by butterflies and it was going to be wonderful. And it was wonderful, but actually we were taken to a little area, a little parking area, not a parking area, but a little like just a space, a clearing. And everything was roped off and you could not leave that clearing. So we just sat and waited to see what was going to happen. It was early, it was very, very cold. Another day we went to Sierra Chinqua, which is much smaller, and that one you have to climb to as well. And that's about all the people it would contain. It's a very tiny area. These monarch sites are extremely tiny. They take a very tiny space. It's amazing. And here's Dr. Emmel taking pictures, and this says, this was at the second one, it says, because of the crowds, just spend 18 minutes here and move on. I mean, it is really crowded now. And then this reminds people, when it's cold, the butterflies are going to be sitting in the trees, and they're not going to move. And when it's warm, they're going to heat up, and then you're going to see them take flight. And that was a lot of fun. So here we are in the morning when they're inactive. And you can see them clinging to the trees in huge clumps. They look to me like dead leaves.
How
See,
close could you get to them?
well, if you were on the edge of your little area where the yellow tape was, they'd come flying overhead. You could see them in the forest, but you could not walk in the forest. You could not walk around in their habitat. You were like, you know, you were in the zoo. And they look like that.
What month are you talking about?
February.
It's not in the top group.
Huh? So they, it worked earlier. So overnight they stay, and as the sun warms up, they start moving up and down the valleys. They may nectar a little bit. They may go to where it's cooler or warmer, but basically they have to keep their bodies pretty cool. And now it's a little later on, and you can see you begin to see the orange on the tops of their wings. Can't believe it.
There it is.
So that was early morning. And then once the sun gets hotter and it rises, they start moving around. Now they look like flowers, orange flowers in the trees. It was pretty spectacular, or Christmas ornaments. And here they are, holding on with their little tarsal claws to the OEML fur. This was still, they were still all compacted there. I don't think it's connecting. And they haven't moved yet. So we were about, I'd say, 20 feet away from those guys.
Did you take these videos?
Yeah, and that's why I have a Mac, because you can edit pretty easily with a Mac. Even I can edit.
And these are the super generation with the big wings?
Yes, yes, this is the generation that lives 9 months. And those sitting there in that tree, many of them may well have come from the Great Lakes. And they're still asexual. They don't eat a whole lot. And then the afternoon, then they really get going.
So where were you, that you can stay the whole day at this place?
Hold on just a second. They look like bats.
That's so cool.
It's just boiling. The forest is boiling. That's slow motion. Sometimes I had to slow it down.
So they're going off at the evening. So
Do they eat then when they're flying around like that?
Do they what?
Do they go eat?
Apparently there's a minimal amount of eating that goes on there because they've already come stocked up. For the most part, they're in diapause and they're just quietly, it's like a bear hibernating for the winter. They're just resting there all winter. They get there late November and they just kind of rest, although they will go up and down the valleys some too. There are streams, pristine mountain streams that these creatures need. It's just about their main source of water because there isn't much rain, and we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to show you that. Just such a shame. I don't imagine they go back to their original tree. They probably shift positions like Linda said. It was real hard to capture them. I wished I had a high quality camera. I think my daughter got that on her cell phone. Don't they look like stained glass? All right, so let's see, there's our mountain stream. And they do some puddling. That's where they get their nice fresh water.
Do they have any predators up there?
Only humans. Yeah, they never mention predators. Whether it's birds or whatever, I don't know. This was a little school group that came across, and you'll see them kind of delicately brushing them so they don't step on them. So back to statistics. Overall, there's been a decrease in their numbers from when they first started counting them in '94. I mean, some years are up, some are down, but overall there's a decrease. And their numbers are measured in terms of hectares, square area, and there's so many monarchs per square hectare. So I don't know how they did it. I think Dr. Emmel was measuring the area. Maybe Wally Ward knows. maybe you know how I mean, on these mountaintops, as steep as they are, I'm not sure how they measure them. They walk the perimeter.
Actually make some assumptions of density.
Okay, but they try, I think they walk the perimeter. It's pretty primitive the way it's done. And then you can see here, this is 3 hectares. It's sometimes the total monarch population has been less than 3 hectares. And here, to help you understand how big a hectare is, here's a football field. If you put it inside here, it'd be 44% of a hectare. So all these football fields would fill 3 hectares. And many times the population doesn't ever total more than that's not a lot of area. And 1 hectare is, they estimate, very rough, 10 to 50 million monarchs. Let's see, the numbers, as you can see, are up and down. They've been perilously low at times, and they have been rebounding. Let's see, I think this was this year's number. It had gone down to 2.5 hectares, and it's bounced back up, maybe because of weather, maybe because of more conservation efforts. I'm not exactly sure why, but we're doing pretty good. And what migration threats there are is deforestation. So anyhow, deforestation has always been a problem, but the Mexican government, especially in the summer when no one's around, they sneak up there and use the logs. It's very primitive. Their housing is very primitive, and they need it for heat. But the Mexican government has been really good about stopping that and stopping the logging trucks and bringing that to a halt. Avocado farming. I knew a lot of avocados came from there, but apparently I think 90% of the avocados we eat in the grocery store come from Michoacan. And there are some coming out of California now, but I've tried to look for California avocados. I can't find any. They're all from Mexico, and these people have to survive. So avocado farming is taking its toll on these last little places. Mining, that's going to be a big one. El Grupo, they like to mine silver and gold and copper, and they are going to Ongangueo. Dr. Emmel said that they had plans to return to Ongangueo where they used to mine. They're going to continue mining, and we all know what mining does to our streams and rivers. I believe it releases arsenic and stuff like that, so they're on tap to be returning to Ongangueo. Other threats. In this country, herbicide-based agriculture, Monsanto's products with glyphosates will wipe out all the weeds that aren't resistant to it. And traditionally, milkweeds have grown on the perimeters of fields where soy and corn are grown, and they don't grow anywhere now. So now you can drive for miles and miles in the Northwest and see nothing but a pure monoculture of soy and corn. There are no more milkweeds up there, or very few. So that's a huge problem. Urbanization and development, I mean, look at where we are now, just the space that we're taking here in Houston and moving west, and how much we're rolling under. And then climate change, global warming. Dr. Emmel said that the butterflies used to arrive by Thanksgiving, and now they don't begin their counts until February because it's gotten so warm. In these mountaintops, they're already about as high up as they can go. Of course, the higher you go, the colder it gets. They've gotten to about as high as they can go. There's no more room to go higher to get to colder areas. They've been moving up higher and higher, and they're kind of topped out now. So if there's a lot more warming that goes on, they're not going to have the cool spots that they need. And what we didn't cover tonight, the discovery of the overwintering sites is just the most amazing, fun, heartwarming story you can ever imagine. We could spend lots more time talking about the migration threat. We could spend a lot of time debating native and tropical milkweed. Should you not? What do you do? That's another talk I don't want to get into. And yeah, national conservation efforts, which I think have been very successful and done a lot of great things. We could have an expert talk about that. So thanks for having me out and being such a great audience, and that's my talk.